Tell me some stories of where things maybe didn't go quite right. Maybe they didn't meet your expectations, or you didn't meet their expectations. Or give me some ideas, some of the things that can go wrong when you don't follow this advice.
Sure. I mean, one of my biggest one probably is a trip to a particular Scandinavian country that had contacted me. The tourism board had contacted me, and they, wanted to work together. We discussed for about a month about a potential trip, and in the end, I gave them we agreed. I gave them a pretty detailed list of my audience, the demographics, what kind of things my blog, what I write about, my travel style, and we wrote up an agreement that showed that they were going to provide a trip. It was about an 8-day trip, focused around, activities that match my blog and that, and that would be of interest to my readership. And I arrived in Helsinki. Oh, there you go. I gave it away. Helsinki. Maybe it was Helsinki, maybe another one. I don't know.
Isn't it Idaho? I'm pretty sure it's Helsinki, Idaho.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And let's just put it this way. I spent 8 days doing things that I absolutely was not interested in, and that, did not match my audience interests either. They basically took my list and pretty much ignored it. And I was being schlepped around to, I don't even know where I was, in some a knitting class at one point. I was on a very remote little island in a town that zero tourists go to or would have any interest. They put me in a lot of places that have no tourism infrastructure or no reason for tourism, and they wanted me to somehow turn it into a tourist destination, which was very difficult. And again, that goes from, while I gave them the list, I didn't put the list actually in the agreement. The agreement was a little bit more vague. It was just like, oh, we'll provide a trip based on your interests, and you'll provide the exposure and the publicity. And that was that was one of my earlier ones, so I learned obviously from that. I thought we had agreed to those specific details, but by not putting it into the agreement, they kind of just ignored it. And that was a very difficult one for both. They couldn't understand why I wasn't able to provide exactly what they wanted to, and I was struggling to just try and find some material to write about to, save it as best I could.
Yeah, definitely having I can see how having some architecture and some very specific places that you go that you could review in advance and approve. Yeah, this is in line with what my audience would find cool and interesting, versus a knitting class. I could see how you were going, oh my God, what have I gotten into?
It was interesting. I'll give them that.
Well, here's a question I have for you, because I have worked with some tourism boards, and I've worked with a lot of mostly a lot of private companies, but some tourism boards. From your perspective, what do you find easier to work with, a private business or a tourism board?
I would probably say a private business, because a private business is generally focused on one particular thing, whether it be a hotel, a restaurant, a tour operator. They do one thing and they want to promote that one thing. Where a tourism board, I think that one of the things that I mentioned earlier, sometimes tourism boards struggle with is knowing themselves what they actually want to get out of a partnership. And I think there's been a little bit of a dip in tourism boards working with influencers. And I think part of that is because there was no way for them to actually measure the success, because they actually didn't know what they were trying to achieve in the first place. So I think it was kind of like, oh, let's invite this, influential blogger over for a week. Great. And then at the end they were like, okay, now what do we do? Like, now they wrote all these posts, but now how do we know if it worked? Because it was very general, where I think now slowly you're starting to see that even the tourism boards get more specific, which I think is very important. It needs to be, okay, we want to now promote. Israel actually does a great job where they actually invite, say, 1 week they're going to say, we want only adventure tourists, adventure bloggers, and we're going to focus only on adventure activities. The next week it's only food bloggers, and they focus only on food activities. So they're very specific. They know exactly what they're trying to get. They know that the demographics match. So I think that's one of the tricky things with the tourism boards. But companies tend to have one thing. They know exactly what they want to get from it, and makes it a little bit easier.
That parallel of having exact clarity on what it is you're going to focus on certainly works on both sides. And I think your Israeli tourism board is a great example. So if you're a tourism board out there, folks, get clear on what it is that you're wanting, and follow the lead of Israel.